Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to another mind-tickling and very interesting episode of the People's African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid, that sits here at Farewell Hotel every Friday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. and the repeated version of the same is telecast on NBS every Saturday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. My name is Bwanga Michael. I am sitting in for the chairperson and speaker of the Pan-African Pyramid. On today's session, we commemorate 21 years since the adoption of the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. On 11 July 2003, African leaders gathered in Maputo, Mozambique, and made a historic commitment to tackle the scourge of corruption. They recognized that corruption undermines democratic institutions, impairs economic development, and erodes trust in government. The convention was a landmark achievement as it elucidated on the following: the establishment of a framework for preventing, detecting, and punishing corruption, promoting transparency, accountability, and good governance, encouraging international cooperation and asset recovery, but most importantly, recognizing the importance of citizen participation and civil society engagement, to mention a few. Since then, it is notable that over 40 countries have ratified the convention. Anti-corruption agencies have been established, and of course, laws and policies have been enacted and so forth. Yet regardless of all this, despite these efforts, corruption remains a pervasive challenge across Africa. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa stated that we lose close to $50 billion annually to corruption. And on tonight's discussion, we ask, 21 years down the road, how far has Africa achieved?
Free your mind.
Speaker, the convention, as you rightly said in your opening remarks, set about a legal framework within which corruption in Africa can be fought. On the 11th July 2003, the African states passed the convention. But it was so important and earth-moving that on the 31st October, the same year, the United Nations also passed the Anti-Corruption Convention. Because they were moved by the fact that African leaders were now beginning to work on the very matter that inhibits development in Africa. Right, Honorable Speaker, what does the framework provide? When we are discussing something like a convention, it's a legal document establishing legal framework. It is not always good to go legalistic because the main point will be missed. However, broadly speaking, the convention provides for a mandatory scheme that every country should set up an anti-corruption mechanism. And in Uganda, we did a lot. We set up the Inspector General of Government. We set up the Anti-Corruption Court. We set up 22 agencies to fight corruption. Right, Honorable Speaker, after the establishment of 22 agencies to fight corruption, how can corruption still be there? As a matter of fact, how can corruption be in the country to the extent that it needs to take the president to begin to record simple messages to trap people so that corruption can be fought? What happened to the agencies? The 22. Right, Honorable Speaker, they were compromised. All these agencies to fight against corruption were compromised, not only in Uganda but all over Africa. So, Right Honorable Speaker, what is the real problem with corruption? There are two things. One, the institutions under which corruption is supposed to be fought have been alienated from the mainstream. Because in every country, there is what we call the public service. The public service are the custodians of morality. You have the police, you have the prisons. These are the traditional public service, and then the Public Service Commission. It is not necessary, in my opinion, to fight corruption by the creation of new organs and new conventions. Corruption is theft and can be well fought with just 3 institutions. 1, Uganda Police Force. 2, Uganda prisons. 3, accounting officers, DS of every ministry. These are enough to fight corruption. You don't need IGG, you don't need the anti-corruption desk in the office of the president, you don't need what? All those are facilitators. The second issue, Right Honorable Speaker, is that corruption is a privilege in Africa. It's a privilege. Not everybody has got a chance and right to be corrupt. Pan-Africanism, Right Honorable Speaker, is a privilege for a few people. Nobody can be corrupt when he's jobless on the streets. Can you be corrupt from the streets? No. Because you need an office to sit somewhere and be corrupt. You cannot be corrupt from your home. You need an office. And you need to be in charge of some money. If you are in charge of some public docket, even as LC1, then now you can become corrupt. If you are somewhere in the public university or private or somewhere, you are in charge of some public money, now you are ready to be corrupt. So for almost 80% of the youth in Uganda, they don't even have that chance and privilege to be corrupt because they are jobless. So who is doing the corruption? The corruption, Right Honorable Speaker, in Africa, as a Pan-Africanist, I can tell you, is being done by the very people who liberated Africa. I start with Algeria. After the Algerian National Liberation Front liberated Algeria, Tunisia, I start with Algeria. They became the leaders and the corrupt. Mozambique, Frelimo, they became the corrupt people in Mozambique. Zimbabwe, who were corrupt in Zimbabwe? ZANU-PF, the people who liberated Zimbabwe, those are people of Robert Mugabe. Fast forward, Uganda. First liberation. I don't want to go to the NRM directly. Let me go to the first liberation of Uganda. Some of you are very young people. You know the first liberation of Uganda? When was it? 1979 was the first liberation of Uganda. 1979, something happened. We had a front called Uganda National Liberation Front. You're welcome, fellow panelists. I've just made a point which I want to repeat because I know you're going to react to it. It says that the people propagating corruption on the African continent are the liberators of Africa themselves. I went to Algeria, gave the example of the Algerian National Liberation Front. Tunisia, And then I went to Mozambique, Frelimo. And then I gave the example of Zimbabwe, whereby corruption under Mugabe was being perpetuated by ZANU-PF, who in 1980 had liberated Zimbabwe. I go to South Africa. South Africa was liberated by the African National Congress. The corruption in the first post-Mandela government removed the Mbeki government. Corruption in Jacob Zuma's state capture removed Jacob Zuma from power. And then I came to Uganda. I said, we had the first liberation of Uganda in 1979. That is when we had a front called Uganda National Liberation Front. And the army was called Uganda National Liberation Army. That is the army that on the 11th April 1979 liberated Uganda. But what happens about corruption? Right Honorable Speaker, the most corrupt individual in Obote II was the Army Chief of Staff, Major General David Oito-Jok, if you did not know. That Emir Chief of Staff was chairman of the Coffee Marketing Board. Some of you are young people, you did not know. By that time, the only foreign exchange earner in Uganda was Coffee Marketing Board. But all the money the nation was earning was going to an account personally controlled by one army officer. Right, Honorable Speaker. We are also in a decade where we see institutionalized corruption now. I thank His Excellency the President for coming out to admit that there is corruption in the country. And you see our president is a wonderful president. When the aid scourge was there, while other presidents were living in denial, like President Thabo Mbeki of South Africa was saying there's no AIDS. Our president came out and admitted, said, no, let's not live in denial. We have a problem of AIDS. And he was the first president in Africa to be open. Now he's the first president in Africa to openly admit that the institution of parliament, the whole government institution, is corrupt. And that is a very key and major achievement. So, Right Honorable Speaker, as we celebrate the 11th July, we also have to be very careful not to fight corruption blindly. So we shall fight corruption in our own timing as Pan-Africanists. That's what I say.
Mr. Chair, in assessing the 21 years of the African Union Convention to fight corruption, and more especially to know whether the African Union has achieved in fighting corruption. Mr. Chairman, you need to analyze very critically and to be very diabolical that corruption in some countries is democratized. In other countries, it is dictatorial. While others, it is systemic. It is actually, in some countries, it has become a subsystem of governance and part of the DNA of the political will of any country. Mr. Chairman, corruption per capita in regard to countries in Africa with the highest level of corruption. I will just give you just only 10 examples. 10 African countries with the highest corruption as regard or according to Transparency International Corruption Perception Index 2024. This is current. It is current information. Now, we want to see which countries are taking the lion's share in terms of corruption. Number 1, Somalia, with corruption perception index 11 and global rank 180. That's the whole one. Now, that means that immediately you jump out of Mogadishu airport, the smell of corruption, you start feeling the smell of corruption. Immediately you land at Mogadishu airport because it takes the first position. Second position, South Sudan. And these are the youngest, in terms of governance. They are just very young. But when it comes to corruption, they take the second position in Africa. Equatorial Guinea, you see, you've seen all these countries. Libya takes the 4th position. Sudan takes the 5th. Democratic Republic of Congo, the 6th. Comoros. Then Chad takes the 8th. Burundi represents us in the EAC, takes the 9th position. Eritrea takes the 10th position. Now, we thank God that Uganda is not among the 10, but I am not sure whether it is not among the 20. I am not sure, but we thank God that at least it is not among the 10 corrupt countries. Mr. Chair, you realize that corruption in these countries takes the form of misappropriation, theft, embezzlement, breach of trust, and commercialization of politics. Mr. Chair, Africa continues to lose over $60 billion annually through illicit financial outflows and bribery. Corruption continues to limit African citizens, and access to basic services becomes a major problem because whatever is provided is being misappropriated by very hungry public officials who do not care about the community. Mr. Chair, the challenge of full implementation of the convention in most African countries is not in line with the African Union Convention in the fight against corruption, especially when you look at section 7 of the convention, because it highlights very clearly about the public awareness and how media is involved in putting into account or asking government to be accountable on the issues at hand as regard to monitoring the implementation of anti-corruption issues in this country. As we conclude, Mr. Chair, the African Union, in assessing the 21 years, I think we need to look at case-by-case basis, depending on which country. Because some countries have put in place the mechanisms that were set in the African Union Convention to fight corruption. Others, it is the others which are, for instance, those which are a banana republic. We have countries which are banana republic, like Somalia, with the institutions which are not in place. We are seeing a lot of insecurity, not the governance issues, any constitutional issues. No, they are facing a lot of challenges, and therefore, for that matter, the fight against corruption in those countries cannot be achieved. And that's why Somalia will continue to get the gold medal as far as achieving getting corruption at the top is concerned.
Thank you so much.
I want to appreciate Uganda for at least being somewhere, although I'm not sure whether it is not among the 20, but I'm not sure. But at least we are somewhere that we are not among the 10. Thank you.
Free your mind now.
When we think of the African Union, we think of an institution that is supposed to bring was supposed to bring Pan-Africanism to the continent. I think we have spoken in this place before about the failure of the African unions, about the success of the African unions. Some success of the African Union has been that the borders that Africa has inherited from colonial time have never really been properly challenged. Some have said it's the good things, some have said it's the bad things. African unions, as my friends used to call it, was a syndicate of criminals. They call it a syndicate of criminals. That's not my words. It's not my words, but many in the continent don't believe much of this institution. So when this institution starts and comes to develop a policy of anti-corruptions, everyone look at it in a funny ways, because the president or the secretary generals of these organizations have been, for many of them, convinced or at least called up for corruption, for personal corruptions, right? So I want to start this presentation. I will insert 3 questions in these presentations, which I think are key questions. The first one is something that we don't really ask often ourselves: what corruption is not. Not what is corruption, but what corruption is not. That's going to be the first question. The second question: how are we handle corruption in the past? Corruption is not. I will try to demonstrate to you that corruption is not something new. Corruption has happened and keep happening into politics. It's the dark side of politics. A common project between humans. So I want to show you how other example of corruption, how has it been handled? Because the solution of the African Union is a legal solution. The solution on paper that is now supposed to be implemented by institutions that might have an interest to protect corruption themselves, right? So I want to propose other solution and just pick up inside history different places and moments where corruption has been handled differently than what we're thinking of today. So corruption exists since politics exists. Let's be really clear. If you look at different sources, if you try to go deep in time, you look at different civilizations, you always find some forms of corruption, some forms of people that were supposed to act for the common good and that did not act for the common good, but therefore acted for themselves. I don't like to refer to the Greek sources or the Roman sources, but if you look at the Greeks, Athenians, civilizations and democratic systems, there were a lot of corruption. Actually, the word democracy itself from Athenian intellectuals, from philosophers, was a bad word because it means corruption. It means that the money will corrupt the people. Most of the Athenians at the time believed that we need to establish theology. We need to have theocracy, places where experts that knows how to handle problems would check at each other, right? Democracy was something that they see wrong. Because it introduced corruptions. It introduced corruptions because the demos, which is the people are in essence, for those thinkers, part of the problem of corruption. Because you are poor and you reach an office, you reach some power, then some element will happen, right? So we're speaking of corruption 2,000 or 3,000 years ago here. What I'm trying to explain to you is that what is politics? Politics is trying to take the leadership and take the governance for a group of people, right? So you take the politics of you're a politician, you try to protect your community, you try to make your community grow. That's what it's supposed to mean. So as soon as you don't do it, we call it corruption. As soon as you don't propose that project, as soon as you deviate from that project, we call it corruptions. But the problem here is that when we think of corruptions on the African continent, we have those stereotypes that comes from colonial time, that was attached by colonial project, that there is more corruption in this continent than there is in other places. And I want to start by saying that that's not true. There is corruption wherever there is politics. The only difference is the stability of the national bourgeoisie. Are they fighting each other really hard, like in South Africa recently between Jacob Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa? Or are they well-established rich people, like the family of France that govern my city? The family of France that govern my city are established there since the middle of 19th century. They fight each other, but like they give each other businesses. They exchange each other favors, they exchange each other's businesses, right? The last time they built a stadium, it was amazing. We were all happy because the stadium was for the local football team, Lille. We have an amazing stadium. If you watch Champions League, you should watch Lille. Beautiful stadium. The stadium was supposed to cost 350 million. It ended up costing 200 million more. It was corruption. It was corruption. The most expensive project have been selected. All the infrastructure were given to a French group versus a Chinese group and an American group that developed for cheaper. The building itself was developed, was way cheaper by other lawyers, cabinet advocates. So what I'm trying to say here is that the people have chosen an expensive stadium to develop in my city so they can feed everyone. They can feed all the families that already exist and were stable here. In the post-colonial African state, we don't have such a stable national bourgeoisie. Everyone is trying to take his place. Everyone is trying to share, to take his side of the cake. So because of that instability, we think that there is more corruption on the African state, on the post-colonial state, but it is not true. So what corruption is not, it's not an African thing. It's really important we understand that. Other examples, Ehud Olmert. Ehud Olmert. Does that sound African to you? The president of Israel, he was convinced for corruption after one mandate, he went to jail. That was the solution. It's a solution that most people have never really made. Colonial powers in Cameroon, for instance, we organized the French, the first corruptions, in order to corrupt the voters so they can vote for the party that will continue the colonial project, right? And establish neo-colonialism. That was the party of Mohamed Ahidjo in the time of first Cameroonese elections. The French selected the men and organized the corruption within the country so the guys can be elected and can continue the colonial project, right? So corruption has been there and have been also introduced by foreign powers. How has it been handled in the past? That man is called MBS, Mohamed Ben Salam. Mohamed Ben Salam arrived in power. He wants to stop corruption, not because he doesn't like corrupt people, but because he wants the money back. He wants the money back for his own project. He doesn't want all that national bourgeoisie that was under his father's authority to get so much privilege and to think that they can do whatever they want. So he wants to rediscipline the national bourgeoisie of his country. He wants to rediscipline them. What does he do? Do you know what he did? He arrested 483 people, all of them direct member of his family. Direct member of his family, his cousins, the wife of his cousins, everyone that cut money. Where did they put them? Did he put them in a military camp? No, we would have heard about that. Did he put them in a jail? No, you can't put your uncle in jail, even if you are the king. It's a bit of a dangerous move, right? So where did he put them? In the best palace in Riyadh. He put them in a 5-star hotel. He privatized the entire hotel, he put all of them there. And he told them one thing: go home. Whenever you want, you go home. But before you go home, you give me half of all the money that you have. We know how much money you have. We have looked at the bank accounts, and we want half of the money. You give us half of your money, you go. He was resizing the assets directly. It was privation of liberty. Can we do that here? I don't know. Has other people done it yet? No. But at the end, he get back the money. He get extremely huge amount of money by just unjailing his own people within the palace. Great. Jerry Rawlings should be as famous as Thomas Sankara. Unfortunately, he didn't develop his radical agenda as far as Thomas did, so he's not as famous as Thomas Sankara, but guess what the man did? Do you know what the man did? He was 28, I think, right, Professor? He was 28, 29, something like this, so some of our age. And then he arrived, he seized power. There was too much corruption in Ghana. He was a military guy in Ghana. He was a top pilot. He was piloting like super amazing jets. And then he said he's tired of that corruption. He saw corruption within the rank of the army. He saw corruption within the presidency and the politicians. What did he do? Did he launch an anti-corruption campaign? Did he try to put them in a 4-star hotel to speak with them? Execution squad. That's English, right? Execution squad. He killed all of them. I repeat, he killed 3 ex-presidents. That man seized power to kill president and give power back to a democratically elected government. I repeat, a man of the army of 28 years old, out of nowhere, came to Ghana to reintroduce justice and killed 3 of his ex-presidents and 5 generals. And then he gave back power 8 months after. He gave back power. He came, he killed them, saying that they were a shame for the Ghanaian nation, they were a shame for the Ghanaian, they were a shame for the project of Pan-Africanism of Kwame Nkrumah. He shot. He shot. Extrajudiciary, what do they call it in Kenya? Extrajudiciary killings? They call it like this, extrajudiciary killings. But rather than killing the poor protesters that just tried to get food on this evening, they killed the president, okay? And he gave back power. So obviously he was considered a hero by Ghanaians, right? In Nigeria, they become mad at him. They were so fan of him. They used to call him the rolling treatment. These days say, our politicians deserve the rolling treatment. What does it mean? It means that if you have still money, there's no second chance for you. We have elected you, you reach power, there's no second chance. Corruption has to be treated like this. That's what they used to think. And then guess what? He gave back the power. And then the men that he gave power back start to do corruption again. Again, the same disease, again and again. What did he do? He did the same thing. He went, he seized the guys, he took him out of power. He didn't kill him, but he put him out of power, right? And he killed all the guys. So what does it mean for us here in 2024? There is a lot of options, there's a lot of tools when it comes to fighting corruption. Us, we think of one tool, we think of the legal tool, we think of the law, the African Union, those institutions. But there is a lot of other tools that have been used. There's a lot of other tools that have been used. One of them was Jerry Rawlings, simply with no judgment, killing out people. Thomas Sankara, on the other side, decided to do a tribunal against corruption. So people that were accused by the people of having a lavish lifestyle, so you know those guys driving BMW, even if we don't know which job they have. Yeah, those guys under Thomas Sankara, out. So, to fight the gap, how do we rediscipline, how do we discipline that national bourgeoisie? How do we discipline the people that are in power so they deliver for us and they think they have an interest to deliver for us rather than delivering for themselves? As the Pan-African of the 80s, Thomas Sankara, Jerry Rawlings, they were saying we do it in the violent way. We kill them, we imprison them, like we do it the violent way because the people are angry. The people were angry. So kind of a sort of mob justice for corruption. That's what they will call for. Nowadays, we have judiciary system, like such as the African Union legal document, or in South Africa, all those commissions of inquiry, all those legal institutions, the public protectors. That works, but that requires so much money and so much time and so much investigations for something that we all know. The guy is here busy driving like a BMW. He was a I'm not gonna say what it was, but really, it was no one really important before.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
Corruption is actually very easy to fight. It's one of the easiest things we can fight. Question. Whenever you make, let me make a case study in Uganda. Whenever they are following up someone, when it comes to corruption, it is always the same. When it goes around, it comes back to the same house. When it goes back, it comes back to the same house. And the same house has to defend them because it is not per se defending the person, but is defending the system that is there. It is politics at play. I have to stay in power for the next how many? We have the goal of 50 years. I have to be in power for the next 50 years. And so if whatever I'm going to do pricks my legacy to staying here, I can cover and it's okay. It's okay, we shall sort it out. Two, the president signed into law two important bills. The appropriation bill has been passed. And under the State House now, we have a new desk. It is to supervise the works of URA. If you may allow me, let me just read through. The presidential press meet wishes to inform the Nigeria Republic that the President of the Republic of Uganda, His Excellency Dr. Museveni, has created the State House Revenue Intelligence and Strategic Operations Unit to do an oversight on URA and operations, URA operations and the fight against corruption within the tax administration system. Now, if URA needs a monitor, sooner than later, Uganda Police Force is going to need a monitor, right? We have IGG is also going to need a monitor. Because you're going to need a monitor of a monitor of a monitor. We're just creating jobs. How is Rwanda doing it? Does Rwanda have such desks within its state, its governing office? Just to ask. Because this fight is very easy. Put them to a firing squad. You see, Uganda is one of the richest countries. There is a year we had issues with the Gavi Fund. We were mandated to pay back that money. Within less than 2 years, we had paid it. Where did it come from? Did they return it? No. But the state paid. So we are rich. Africa is a rich continent. Africa is rich. See, if only the political class had the political will, for one, we, the youths, to be involved in the investments of the country, there will be no trace of corruption. But why are the 2% or the 10% corrupt? Because they have to feed us. How are they going to survive? Per se, if I'm earning 5 million, I have 16 dependents and their families. Am I really going to survive on that? I have to steal more to sustain them. And if the system has allowed me steal, so why won't I? And when will we stop singing the song of corruption? It is only until when we realize that this thing can only be taken out by radical turns. A few 2014, 15, and 16, I was in Kigali. The president, I don't know whether it was by chance or by coincidence, he makes stopovers. The convoy will all of a sudden stop by who is the MP here? So and so. Why is this place like this? This and this. Immediate, you don't leave the place. There's a pink uniform waiting for you. Here, we have the anti-corruption unit. We have now a new desk. We have IGG. All these things, we're just creating beautiful jobs to feed the dependents at home. Now, if I may conclude, if you assess the 21 years, each country, we cannot take Africa as entire, as a unit. There are countries that adopted radical choices, the likes of Morocco. You go steal in Morocco. When they adopted the Sharia, you go steal. Libya before Colonel Muammar Gaddafi passed. You dare. But here, until we get to radicalize the vice and treat it with the uttermost shame, with uttermost effect, I don't know the better words to use, but treat it as it must be, because per se, corruption is one of the causes of one, poverty, the debt. If I'm corrupted, the doctors in Mulago are still on the run because they embezzled, misappropriated. So we give it beautiful names. They stole money, which money was supposed to be used for medication. How many people passed? So if we lose this one person, 5 more will not steal. Just put him to a firing squad. It is treated properly. The others will get to fall in line. Allow me some bit. Thank you.
Free to Sabe.
First and foremost, maybe corruption is a very nice name, and I think that's why it's becoming much more common, not just in Uganda, but at the African continent. And the aristocrats have been very clear, especially in the days that are gone, that if you want to make any other country and its citizens very poor but also poorer, you just collect taxes from them and ensure that you not provide the basic needs of those citizens. And I think that's where we are going, because when you look at how taxes are being collected, high escalating the increase and the inflation and the high increase of the commodities, especially the very essential ones, and we do not have drugs in our hospitals, in our constituencies, you now see where we are going. So that is really deliberately that the government is making our citizens very poor but also poorer. In the words of Bishop Desmond Tutu, you might recall that in the 1940s, when he was fighting against the apartheid policy in South Africa, he was very clear that even in the face of impossible, the focused people can change society. Now this is people, not an individual. that means that you cannot fight corruption when you are an individual. It's also important to note that you can't fight corruption except if you organize it. And I think this calls for dialogue, and I think equally commonly someone talked about dialoguing. Of course, we must have similar discussions like these ones, whereby young people, our generation, can meet and settle and champion a national mandate to demystify the use of money, but also in the politics of this country. Why Pan-Africanism? The African Union, especially before it was changed in 2002 to African Union, the founders were very clear, the forefathers. The idea of having Africans united, is corruption disuniting Africans? The answer is yes. So do we live and talk and move by the principalities of democracy, I mean, of Pan-Africanism? Of course not. Why? Because the leaders we have today are very selfish, egocentric, and cannot want to protect the generation. That means the African moral values have degenerated. So what do we need? We need to call off those people. And I also want to commend our colleague from France, who is a journalist, when he was very clear on the measures that those of Thomas Sankara had put. When you suspect anybody is being corrupt, it's like death. Just finish them. Maybe like the one of, I think there was another example where he showed us that once we get this power corrupt, just get them somewhere, arrest them, ensure that they produce the money because this money is kept. So of course, it's really a menace. Our country, our individuals, our citizens are suffering. So why can't we hold such people accountable? Of course, this won't be done by individuals. It will be done by everybody of us. You have seen what is happening today. Our colleague is in Luzira. Over here, no case. Why? Because you are simply defining and speaking the truth for the bad. So, as an individual, you won't be able to handle it, except if we do it that one as well. And ensure that we fight those people who are in power, but in a clean manner, by a combined effort. That is the only way how we can counter-hegemonize all of those that are fond of doing the corruption tendencies.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
So, in agreement with all the speakers about corruption, I can see there is one thing we have to look at. Because now, it's like an iceberg. It's like an iceberg and we only see what is on top. But the whole problem is within us. We have to first admit that we are all products of corruption, if I'm to say. And before we analyze other people, we have to start with us ourselves. However, I never wanted to go much into what everyone has said, but me, our thinking, like as Ugandans. Can there be a syllabus in the primary school called corruption, such that we are raising a generation that will be ready to fight this corruption? Because now, as we can see, but as long as you are in position to give a service, you can be corrupt. But me, our thinking, if all the efforts would be put back on ground in primary schools, these kids, let it be introduced as a subject. They study corruption, they know how they can fight corruption. We can raise a free and a fresh generation that has no corruption. Thank you.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
One of my supervisors was telling us that everything that we see at the macro level is happening at the micro level. That everything that we see in the political realm up there, in those big nations, Uganda as well, is happening in our small villages. Then, a new unit has been created to oversee the URA operations and corruption fight within the tax administration system. Lovely comrades, the man who has been given the position, that's Mr. Kalemera David, was convicted of corruption.
That's right.
You understand? That was in 2018. This brings us back to the statement made by our president that if we fire the corrupt, whom shall we work with? Is this something of use a thief to catch a thief? How sure are we that these people who are placed in these very positions are going to be able to serve? Are we going to see any difference? I really believe there should be new people who are given opportunity to serve in these places. And if they fail, they should be fired. I once told someone, people who are entrusted with public office must serve and serve diligently. No one should be able to feel pity for an MP. Someone was saying, that person stole but ate with the community. I imagine, do our leaders not trust the systems that if there's money allocated for medication, this money won't reach down to the people? These people ought to serve. They're entitled to salaries and their allowances. Let them stay with that. Anything that's meant for the public, let it pass through the right systems. Thank you very much.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
I'd like to appreciate the former speakers upon the corruption. Corruption is very, very, very bad. It hinders the development of the country. However, it started long ago. Even during colonialism, there was corruption. I can take you back to the Berlin Conference when Otto von Bismarck of Germany called the Berlin Conference in 1884 to come and make colonies in Africa. That colonialism started with even corruption, because they diverted and had to come in Africa and shared the countries as they shared it. But however, towards the independence, some African leaders were also corrupt. For example, we can have like Mobutu Sese Seko, who was ruling the country known as Zaire, this time the one which is known as Democratic Republic of Congo, and others were many. I may not mention all of them, but however, this is a bad disease. In Uganda here, although there have been steps taken, see that corruption is eradicated, it may be a problem, because even some officers, they use it. We are traveling, you can see a policeman, some drivers here, handing him something, because he's using that position as a corruption. So you know how we can control it. If the policeman who is paid the government salary needs something from the drivers, and with the passengers need to go, because we have different programs. In that regard, therefore, we have to be so lenient and have our country at heart so that corruption may be eradicated.
Free Sabe.
Now, for me, from the realistic part of view, corruption has three pillars that have made it an elastic impact on society. One is the political class. Two, it is the youth. Three, it's the system, the laws that are governing societies. I wanted to ask any person to tell me, from which base did you decide that an area MP who works 3 days a week, and what he's working is by coming on the floor and tell the problems of the community he comes from, should get 50 million, and someone who is treating someone with cancer should get 2 million? From which principles? Under which circumstance does a teacher who makes an effort to teach from Monday to Sunday to make sure that that person comes out as a teacher, as a doctor, as an infrastructure person, as a security personnel, get 50, 100, or get 1 million? And then someone who works 3 days a week, and by honest speaking that this community is having such a problem, should get 50 million a month, and a teacher get 600. Under which principles were those people making laws? And if at all they made those mistakes, from the time we have been born, we have been going through those systems, and we have not noticed that this is a problem. As we all say, challenges that were there in the 20th centuries are not the challenges that we have today. Therefore, I believe that even the system itself, it's there. If at all a day comes and we say MPs are going to be getting 15 million, business people are going to get out of the political class, and the politicians occupy their space. Because who will go there will be only these people that are interested in serving. Now the business people will go to other areas where they can get greener pastures. That is the political class. Now the youth, I can assure you here, there are people that know the coaches in Europe of football clubs, the families, the number of children they have, how much they earn a year, how much they earn a week, how much they earn an hour, and they don't know their area MP's name and how much they get. There are people who are not interested in their own stuff. You find someone having sleepless nights for an European club making money there. I'm not saying sports is bad, but we have priorities. You are not interested to someone who is determining what you should eat, which road you should move on, which hospital you should be attended to, and all your mind is occupied with what, which league, which team, which text, which film, which musician. And at the end of it all, even people who are corrupt are given a chance to be corrupt without being exerted on any pressure, because you don't see, there is no interest in youth as far as the national matters are concerned. So, solutions, we should do reflect. Solution is, first of all, as young people, let's have interest in our continent. Let our priority be our country, our continent, and I can assure you corruption, it may not be fought to zero, but it can be reduced. I thank you very much.
Free survey.
I'd like to say that Africa has truly made some strides in combating corruption. But it often feels like we are scratching the surface while we leave the root causes fester unchecked. Like, for example, what we do is we poison the tadpoles and leave their mothers to lay more eggs. I don't know whether you understand me. What I'm trying to say is that we hang the petty thieves, or we hang the tilapias and then leave the crocodiles to swim freely. That's what we do in Africa. And I would like to clarify this, that there is no corruption in Africa. We don't have corruption in Africa. But what we have, because corruption implies a certain level of sophistication in theft or intelligence in theft. But what we have here is outright plunging and grand theft, or looting and theft on an industrial scale. In a conclusion, how can we solve this? The solution is just one. You say we are going to educate the next generation so that it does not become like our generation. But of course, that next generation will find us here. We'll find the corrupt here. So what we can do, if God does exist, if God is there, what we can do is a divine pledge a divine distribution. Let's have a new world. Let's create a new Africa for each and everyone, so that they come not knowing that corruption existed before. But if they come knowing that corruption was here, I don't think they will not be corrupt as well. Thank you so much.
Comrades, today's debate is a reaffirmation that corruption remains a significant obstacle to Africa's development. Despite the progress made since the adoption of the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption 21 years ago, while we have made notable strides in establishing anti-corruption agencies, enacting laws and policies, and promoting international cooperation, the stark reality is that corruption continues to undermine our democratic institutions, impede economic development, and erode trust in government. The staggering figures of billions of dollars lost annually to corruption is a sobering reminder of the magnitude of this challenge. However, we must also continue to acknowledge the resiliency and determination of African citizens, civil society organizations, and governments who continue to push for accountability, transparency, and good governance. Fellow Pan-Africanists, as we move forward, we must equally prioritize the empowerment of citizens and civil societies so that they aid the strengthening of institutions, legal frameworks, and also help us to leverage technology and innovation in the fight to prevent and combat corruption. Let us continue to harness the momentum from this debate to reignite our collective commitment to fight corruption and work towards an Africa that is just, equitable, and prosperous for all. Viva to a corruption-free Africa. Africa, don't agonize, organize. Till next time, see you when you see.
Join us on the 7th Pan-African Pyramid Global Awards 2024 and 10th Anniversary Bonfire Dinner, recognizing and awarding Pan-Africanists who selflessly fought and defended the rights and freedoms of the black race globally. On 31st August 2024 at Fairway Hotel from 3 p.m. Dress code, strictly traditional or African wear. Theme, Pan-Africanism plus environmentalism equals to humanism. Book your dinner card now. Table for 6, 3 million. Platinum, 1 million. Gold, 500K. Silver, 400K. Bronze, 150K. Come, let's rekindle our roots. Call 0757 342 317 or 0782 342 317 to book your ticket now. Africa, don't agonize, organize. Powered by Fairway Hotel, NBS TV, Grow Foundation, The Spy Uganda, Detective UG.